Avatar: The Last Airbender, one of the greatest animated shows ever made, is really two works in one. The first is the tale of Aang, a perky 12-year-old kid whom the show informs us is the only one capable of defeating the dictator of the Fire Nation, Fire Lord Ozai, because Aang has the ability to control all four elements. The other story is the story of a broken family. A father consumed by his lust for power. An uncle who initially pursues material gains but later leaves that life behind in order to seek spiritual enlightenment. A mother who is willing to do the unthinkable in order to protect her son. And most importantly, the second story is the story of a sister and a brother. One who is beloved by their father, the other who is despised by him. One who goes on the journey to transcend the propaganda that had trapped him in a narrow and restrictive and limiting mindset. The other, who cannot go on that journey, as such, sees her mental state utterly deteriorate. Both shows inside Avatar are great, but as I grow up, I find myself increasingly preferring the second, and especially preferring the final battle between Zuko and Azula, that being the Final Agni Kai. I probably don't need to tell y'all this is one of the most evocative scenes in Avatar. I would go even further and add that it's one of the most mesmerizing scenes of any show of the 2000s, animated or otherwise. From the music, to the choreography, to the sound design, it achieves a unity and purity of form and purpose that elevates it far above the typical final battle scene. There have been a litany of videos analyzing it, but I would like to focus on one element in particular. And that is how, and more importantly, why, the Final Agni Kai diverges from the expected fantasy adventure template of a final battle. To speak bluntly, this scene is sad. Achingly so, even. It's the opposite of triumphant. The show can get away with this because it is not important for Zuko to prove his character development here. He's already done this, first by turning against his father and confronting that father, the person he once held in such high regard, and then accepting the judgment of Team Avatar, the people he had spent the first 2 seasons chasing around the world. Team Avatar has every reason to reject him, and indeed they do reject him at first, but he is persistent. He does not allow his ego to be damaged by their rejections. He has freed himself from arrogance, and as such he keeps attempting to earn their forgiveness until they finally, willingly give it to him. So this fight isn't really about him. True, it provides him with the opportunity to showcase how much he has grown, especially considering he is fighting alongside Katara. He had to do the most to earn her forgiveness, because she accepted him all the way back in Season 2, and he betrayed her personally by the end of that episode. So that the two of them are fighting together is as much of an accomplishment as anything Zuko actually accomplishes during the battle itself. But whereas a lesser show would have framed this conflict purely as Zuko triumphing over his unstable sister, Avatar: The Last Airbender has the nuance and maturity to empathize with Azula. Yes, she is rarely shown a shred of empathy, even when she was a kid. Yes, she spearheaded a plan to commit genocide on the Earth Kingdom. Yes, she has caused psychological strife to her brother and driven her mother, who by all accounts is a kind and generous woman, to despondency. As Iroh says as he recovers from when she knocked him unconscious, she's crazy and she needs to go down. And yet, she's still 14. She's still a child from a broken home who has been manipulated by her abusive father. And she is losing what little remains of her sanity. She believes no one will love her, and after May's betrayal convinces her that her preferred method of control, fear, does not work, she gives in to despair. She believes she cannot trust anyone. She believes everyone is as conniving as her, only maybe not as good at it, and the thought of everyone being so manipulative terrifies her. The show demonstrates this, but it doesn't make it so obvious. It doesn't beat you over the head with it. It implores you to use your own critical understanding to relate to Azula, and I really appreciate it for that. The fight between Aang and Ozai was inevitable. It was set up as the conclusion of the show from the show's very first episodes. That's why it has this up-tempo, upbeat music. Sure, it sounds offbeat and deranged almost, perhaps to better reflect Ozai's deteriorating mental state, but still, it's not nervous, it's not anxious, it's not somber. The music that soundtracks the Final Agni Kai is. Zuko would much rather not do this. Despite all the harm Azula has caused him, he still cares about her. A lot. It is interesting when Zuko assumes that his uncle Iroh will tell him to get along with his sister. It's possible that he assumes this because his uncle tends to be kind and sweet and forgiving, and it's also possible he assumes this because it's what his mother would have told him to do. But it is also possible that the voice that tells him he should try to get along with Azula is his own conscience. He wants to help her out. We see later, in the comics, that he really wants a better relationship with her, one comparable to the relationship between Sokka and Katara. If Zuko could end Azula's reign in a way that did not involve physical violence, he would have done so. But he can't, and he knows this, and that is part of what makes the scene so profoundly tragic. It's not about Zuko defeating Azula, it's about the aftermath of Azula defeating herself. Growing up as the untalented one in his family, the one his father said was lucky to be born, Zuko wanted nothing more than to prove himself. He wanted nothing more than to best Azula and prove that she was not a better firebender than him. If Zuko had defeated her at full strength, that would have allowed him his childhood dream. But this does not happen, and that matters. What Zuko comes to understand is that his sibling rivalry, while justifiable considering how cruel Azula was to him, is not a solution. While Azula may have caused him strife, she was not his oppressor. Rather, she was a fellow victim. While her suffering may have been more latent than his, that does not make it any less legitimate. When her life falls apart, she has no idea how to respond to it, because growing up she never had to consider that possibility. She believed that she was just about perfect, and that her family was divinely chosen to rule, a viewpoint she points out to Long Fang near the end of Season 2. This is a young woman who gets irate when a couple hairs are out of place, This is not a person capable of handling abject failure. So what does she do? She lashes out. Again, I would like to repeat that Zuko does not defeat Azula. Azula defeats herself. And Zuko just deals the finishing blow to her reign. Had Azula played fair, Zuko would have defeated her easily. And even though she didn't, Katara was able to defeat her with trickery. Azula, who has hitherto been the master of trickery, would likely have not fallen for such a straightforward trick had she been in a better place mentally. None of this diminishes Zuko's triumph. Remember, this scene is not about him as much as it is about Azula. Zuko has already achieved victory over his demons, first via his confrontation with Ozai, and then via the so-called Zuko field trip arc. The Final Agni Kai is not a triumph. It's a lament for what is, and an elegy for what could have been. Katara, despite her steadfast moral commitment to seeing the best in others, does not typically extend that commitment to those who have personally betrayed her, like Jet or Zuko. Yes, she forgave Zuko, but it took a very long time, and a lot of remorse on Zuko's part. Thus, she should be furious for what Azula did to Zuko, but instead, she shares Zuko's empathy for Azula. She's as solemn as Zuko is when they look upon what Azula has become. Azula primarily defined herself by her cunning and her fighting skills, and now she doesn't have any of that. Who is she now? She doesn't herself know. She is haunted. Yes, she is a villain, but more importantly, she is a bitterly broken human being. The Final Agni Kai is great because it understands that. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching Avatar. It really is great to make another Avatar video. I love this show. It is the rare show capable of both great whimsy and excruciating tragedy. So tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.